They called her pencil pusher and made her count supplies. When terrorists breached Fort Campbell, they discovered Sarah Martinez wasn't just managing inventory. Welcome to Shadow Veteran Stories, where hidden heroes walk among us in plain sight. Before we begin this powerful story of respect, survival, and the price of assumptions, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe every veteran deserves recognition, hit that subscribe button, the fluorescent. Lights hummed overhead in Supply Building 7 at Fort Campbell, casting harsh shadows across endless rows of inventory shelves. Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 35, moved between the metal racks with mechanical precision, her clipboard marking off items with the methodical care of someone who had turned paperwork into an art form. At 5'4", with shoulder-length black hair, pulled into a regulation bun, Sarah possessed the kind of unremarkable appearance that made her nearly invisible to the soldiers who rotated through her supply depot. For 3 years, she had processed requisitions, managed inventory and maintained equipment records while the real soldiers trained for combat operations. The morning started like every other at Fort Campbell. Soldiers lined up outside her, a window waiting for equipment requests to be processed. Sergeant First Class Mike Torres leaned against the counter, drumming his fingers impatiently. "Come on, Martinez," he said with barely concealed irritation. "How long does it take to find some batteries? We've got real training to do." Sarah continued checking her computer system without looking up. "Standard requisition processing time. It's 15 minutes, Sergeant." "It's been 12. Torres rolled his eyes and turned to his buddy, Corporal Jake Williams. 3 years of this. You'd think she'd have learned to move faster by now. "That's what happens when they stick pencil pushers in charge of actual military equipment," Williams replied, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Some people are built for paperwork, not soldiering." The comment drew chuckles from the other soldiers. In line. They had all heard variations of this conversation before. In their minds, Sarah Martinez was the administrative equivalent of furniture. Necessary but forgettable, competent but uninspiring. "Here are your batteries," Sarah said, sliding the box across the counter. Her voice remained professional despite the constant stream of dismissive comments. "Finally," Torres muttered, grabbing the box. "Maybe tomorrow you can process this in under an hour." Sarah watched them leave, their laughter echoing off the concrete walls. What they didn't know, what nobody at Fort Campbell knew, was that those same hands signing requisition forms had once assembled explosive devices under enemy fire in classified locations that didn't appear on any official maps. For 8 years, Sarah Martinez had been one of the Army's most elite operators, Delta Force, the unit that didn't officially exist, that handled missions too sensitive for public acknowledgement. She had led teams into situations that would have broken most soldiers, making life-or-death decisions, while managing complex operations across multiple theaters of combat. But that was before Kandahar, before the IED that killed 3 of her team members and left her with burns across 40% of her body and shrapnel fragments too close to vital organs to safely remove. The medical discharge papers had been signed before she'd even left the hospital. Sarah had requested the Fort Campbell assignment specifically because she wanted anonymity. After years of high-stakes operations where every decision carried fatal consequences, processing supply requests felt like therapy. Nobody expected heroics from a quartermaster. Nobody looked for tactical brilliance in inventory management. At a year, 14:30 hours, the routine shattered. Sarah was updating her computer records when the base emergency siren began wailing. The piercing sound that every soldier dreaded, the one that meant Fort Campbell was under direct attack. Through her supply depot window, Sarah could see soldiers running in formation toward defensive positions, but something was wrong with their movement patterns. Instead of the coordinated response drills had prepared them for, she was watching confusion and panic. Her radio crackled to life with fragmented transmissions. "Base defense, this is Gate 3. We have multiple breaches. Armed intruders with military-grade equipment. Command Center, this is Alpha Company. We're taking fire from inside the base perimeter. Hostiles have already infiltrated." Sarah's trained ear caught what the panicked voices were missing. This wasn't a random attack. The timing, the coordination, the fact that intruders were already inside the base, this was a planned operation by people who understood military protocols. She grabbed her radio and tried to contact the command center. Static. Then she tried base security. Nothing but dead air. The communication systems had been compromised. Fort Campbell was isolated, and whoever had planned this attack knew exactly how to cripple the base's ability to coordinate a response. Through her window, Sarah watched soldiers taking cover behind vehicles, but their defensive positions were all wrong. They were reacting to threats from the perimeter when the real danger was already among them. Her Delta Force training kicked in automatically. Assess, adapt, act, assessment, coordinated attack by well-trained hostiles with inside knowledge of base layout and protocols. Command structure compromised, communications down, approximately 150 personnel on base, most in vulnerable positions. Adaptation required. Someone needed to establish alternative command and control, coordinate defensive positions, and neutralize the immediate threats. Sarah opened her supply depots, security cabinet, and removed items that had been gathering dust for 3 years. Body armor that fit her perfectly, a sidearm she had hoped never to need again, tactical gear that felt as familiar as her own skin. For the first time in 3 years, Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez was preparing for combat operations. She keyed her radio to the emergency frequency and began speaking in the calm, authoritative voice that had once coordinated multi-unit operations across hostile territory. All units, this is Ghost Actual. Command center is compromised. Switch to alternate frequency 275.4. Establish defensive perimeter around buildings 12, 15, and 23. Do not pursue hostiles outside designated zones. The radio went silent for a moment. Then Torres's voice came through, confused and skeptical. Ghost Actual, identify yourself. Who is this? This is Staff Sergeant Martinez, Supply Building 7. I'm assuming tactical command until primary leadership is re-established. Sarah could almost hear the disbelief through the radio static. The pencil. Pusher was trying to give orders to combat troops. Martinez, with respect, stay in your supply depot. This is a job for real soldiers. That's when the first explosion rocked the base. Sarah watched through her window as Building 12 erupted in flames, sending soldiers scrambling for cover. Whatever the hostiles were using, it was military-grade explosive with precise placement for maximum psychological impact. Sarah grabbed her tactical gear and headed for the door. 3 years of anonymity were about to end. All units, this is Ghost Actual. Building 12 is compromised. Hostiles are using the construction site behind Building 15 as a staging area. Alpha Team, establish overwatch positions on the motor pool roof. Bravo Team, secure the ammunition depot before hostiles can access it. As Sarah moved across the base, she found chaos. Soldiers were taking defensive positions based on training manuals rather than adapting to the actual tactical situation. Their reactions were predictable, which made them vulnerable to an enemy that clearly understood how conventional military units would respond. She reached a group of 6 soldiers pinned down behind a concrete barrier. Sergeant Torres was among them, his face showing the strain of someone realizing that textbook solutions weren't working against real-world problems. Martinez, he said in disbelief as Sarah approached in full tactical gear. What the hell are you doing here? Taking command, Sarah replied calmly, studying the tactical situation through her scope. You've got 2 shooters in elevated positions coordinating fields of fire to keep you pinned. Standard suppression tactics. We know where they are, Torres replied defensively. We just can't get a clear shot. Sarah was already moving, using cover and concealment techniques that belonged in special operations manuals rather than standard infantry training. She reached a position that provided clear lines of sight to both hostile locations. 2 precise shots, 2 targets eliminated. Move now, she commanded. Establish firing positions at the vehicle maintenance shed. Watch for crossfire from the communications building. The soldiers stared at her for a moment, then followed her orders without question. Something in her voice and movements had communicated more authority than any rank insignia could provide. Over the next 40 minutes, Sarah coordinated a systematic response that gradually shifted the tactical advantage. She identified hostile staging areas that had been invisible from ground-level perspectives, directed precise counterattacks that neutralized key threats, and established communications protocols that restored coordination among scattered units. But the most dramatic moment came when she realized the hostiles' ultimate objective. Whole units, this is Ghost Actual. Hostiles are moving toward the base ammunition depot. This is not a random attack. They're after our weapons and explosive storage. Sarah understood immediately what they were facing. This wasn't terrorism for psychological impact. This was a sophisticated operation designed to steal military-grade weapons and explosives, the kind of material that could be used for much larger attacks on civilian targets. She grabbed her radio and made a decision that would define everything that followed. All units, ammunition depot is priority 1. Whatever it takes, that facility cannot be compromised. The final assault required Sarah to do something she hadn't done in 3 years, lead soldiers into direct combat. She approached the group of soldiers who had been pinned down earlier. Torres, Williams, and 4 others looked at her with expressions mixing confusion and growing respect. "Sergeant Martinez," Torres said carefully, "how do you know all this tactical stuff?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "Because before I became your pencil pusher, I spent 8 years as a Delta Force operator, and right now those skills are the only thing standing between us and a catastrophic security breach." The silence that followed was profound. Williams was the first to speak. "Delta Force, you were actually..." "Former Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. 3 tours Afghanistan, 2 Iraq, 1 classified location. Medal of Honor recipient for operations in Kandahar Province." Torres' jaw dropped. "Jesus Christ, we've been treating you like a supply clerk," Sarah finished, "which is exactly what I wanted. But today we need something different." She outlined her plan for securing the ammunition depot. It required coordinated movement, precise timing, and tactical skills that pushed conventional infantry training to its limits. "This is going to be dangerous," she told them. "I can't guarantee everyone comes home, but I can guarantee that if we don't stop them here, a lot more people are going to die." Every soldier volunteered immediately. The assault on the ammunition depot was everything Sarah had tried to leave behind. Close quarters combat, split-second decisions, the kind of violence that required absolute commitment and perfect execution. But it also reminded her why she had been so effective as a Delta Force operator. Not just because of individual skills, but because of her ability to inspire ordinary soldiers to perform at extraordinary levels. Under her leadership, the 6th Soldier Unit moved with precision that belonged in special operations training films. They eliminated hostiles who had anticipated facing conventional defensive responses, not a coordinated assault led by someone with elite tactical training. When the final hostile was neutralized and the ammunition depot secured, Sarah found herself standing in the same place where her military career had effectively ended 3 years earlier, surrounded by soldiers who looked at her with newfound respect and understanding. Torres approached first, his expression showing genuine shame for years of dismissive treatment. "Sergeant Martinez, I owe you an apology. We all do. We had no idea who you really were." Sarah removed her tactical helmet, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. "You weren't supposed to know. I came here to be a supply clerk, not a soldier." "But you're still a soldier," Williams said quietly. "Today proved that." Colonel Harrison arrived with the emergency response team just as Sarah was beginning to inventory the ammunition depot for security purposes. His debriefing was brief but comprehensive. "Sergeant Martinez, what you accomplished today will be studied in tactical training programs. 7 hostiles neutralized, no friendly casualties, critical infrastructure protected, and command structure restored under impossible circumstances." He paused, studying her with professional appreciation. "More importantly, you demonstrated leadership capabilities that the Army desperately needs. I'm recommending you for immediate reinstatement to active combat status with rank restoration." Sarah looked around at the soldiers who had followed her into combat, then at the supply depot, where she had found 3 years of peace. "Sir, I appreciate the recognition, but I'm exactly where I want to be." Colonel Harrison frowned. "Sergeant, with your experience and proven capabilities, you could be leading special operations units again." "Colonel, today I learned something important. Leadership doesn't require a special operations assignment. It requires being ready when people need you most." She gestured toward Torres and the others. "These soldiers performed at elite levels today, not because of their training, but because someone believed they could. That's the kind of leadership the Army needs in every unit, not just the special ones." 3 weeks later, Sarah was back at her supply depot, processing requisitions and managing inventory. But everything had changed. When soldiers approached her window now, they did so with respect. Not because she was a Medal of Honor recipient or former Delta Force operator, but because she had proven that heroism came in many forms. Torres was among her regular customers, but his demeanor was completely different. "Morning, Sergeant Martinez. I need batteries for our communication equipment." "Standard requisition processing time is 15 minutes, Sarah replied with a slight smile. "Take all the time you need," Torres replied seriously. "We know quality when we see it." As he waited, he asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Sergeant, why did you really leave Delta Force? Why choose supply work?" Sarah continued processing his request, but her expression grew thoughtful. "Because after years of taking lives, I wanted to spend time supporting them. Every piece of equipment I process, every requisition I fulfill, it helps soldiers do their jobs safely and effectively. That's another way of serving. Torres nodded slowly. And if something like that attack happens again, Sarah met his gaze directly. Then I'll be ready, but I hope it never comes to that. That evening, as Sarah locked up her supply depot, she reflected on how one afternoon had changed everything, while changing nothing at all. She was still the same person processing the same requisitions, but now everyone understood that being a supply clerk didn't diminish her value as a soldier. The attack on Fort Campbell had reminded everyone that heroism wasn't about your current assignment. It was about being prepared to rise to the occasion when lives depended on your actions. Sarah Martinez had spent 3 years hiding her capabilities behind inventory sheets and requisition forms, but when the moment demanded it, she had proven that true warriors never really retire. They just serve in different ways, and sometimes the person counting your supplies is the same person who would risk everything to keep you alive. So I ask, have you ever met someone like Sarah Martinez? Someone you dismissed because of their current job, only to discover they had extraordinary experience and capabilities? Someone whose true story was hidden behind assumptions about what their work meant? Share their story in the comments, because at Shadow Veteran Stories, we believe that heroes come in many forms, and the people who keep our communities running safely often do so without recognition. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that honor the hidden heroes among us. Until next time, remember, you never know who's really processing your paperwork.